banelings are. That's a lot safer, but there goes all the Marines. That's your Mutalisk defense. And now the Mutas can swoop in here while the Marines were away, but they didn't. They're coming in a little bit too late here. You kind of want to be on top of that. You can hotkey your Zerglings and your Mutalisks, you know. Click the banelings A move and then micro with the Mutalisks. I mean, it's not that hard to do, and you just have to know which units require more micro and which units require less micro. He's going to be able to take out these Marines though, and now these siege tanks are going to need to run away, but they're not moving, so he's going to probably lose all 3 of these. He's got Marines on the way, but I don't think they're going to get there in time, so I think he's going to lose all 3 of these siege tanks. And once again, it's just more micro.
Yeah, I can see the Mutalisks have been forcing stim packs. They've been really whittling down any Marines with their harassment. Against the Zerg player, Mutalisk harassment is a very common strategy, mainly because it's so effective if you can't defend it. Missile turrets, Thors, good Marine placement, good heads up, stimming in here with not a very small amount of Marines. I mean, no amount of scoot and shoot micro is going to save these Marines. There's no point in wasting this bunch of Marines. And now he still thinks he's on 2 base. He's like, oh, he hasn't broken down his rocks yet. Make sure that, especially 20 minutes into a game, if you think a Zerg player's on 2 base and you haven't been attacking at all and our Terran player really hasn't been, you're probably mistaken. And the supplies are still only 100 to 90, so not that bad. Our Zerg player is sitting on 4,000 mineral zone. Our mules are still full here. So our Terran player now taking expansion. This is, when you're behind like this, oh god. Oh man, that's just, oh boy. I was going to say he should have got those Marines out of there, because if you're behind like this as Terran and you're trying to take a 3rd base, your priority becomes defense. You need to get that 3rd base up after losing that many SCVs. You need to play defense. But our Terran player insisting on playing offense. I guess, you know, a good offense, you know, best defense is a good offense sometimes. So sometimes. Not always in StarCraft if you can't handle it. Our Zerg player is taking a 4th base here, really not going for his destructible rocks. And I guess if our Terran player, oh man, that's a lot of drones. If our Terran player is never going to look at it, I guess he's going to trick him into thinking he's got this game one up a lot easier than he actually does. So Banelings holding off defense here. On this map, trying to do a midfield contain is not smart. Yeah, you just run around here and then all of a sudden all the units are in the main base, totally out of position. On a map like Xel'Naga Caverns, there's really not a whole lot of space to run around, or Shakira's Plateau, where there is really one main highway. Then a midfield contain or kind of a setup would be effective. And instead, though, his whole Mutalisk could come in here, Zerglings could come in here, no problem, and really put a hurt on the Terran. Especially now that he's trying to get up his 3rd base.
Yeah, so a couple things to talk about here. The Zerg player is sitting on 3,700 minerals, and he still has this hidden 3rd, but he still hasn't broken down the rocks to take his quote-unquote 3rd natural, if you will. There's no reason not to right now. The Terran player is sitting in the middle of the map, and the Zerg player doesn't necessarily know this, but he also knows he's not being attacked. So there's no reason to not, you know, at least attempt to take, you know, some more bases. He's taking this, he's taking a 4th base up in the very top here on the top left, but that's not really necessary. There's more bases to be taken, and I don't know, in the same token, he could take a lot more bases. And as you can see here, these Banelings are going to roll in. Zerglings are getting the surround. The siege tanks are unsieged. That's just bad news for everybody. And yeah, this Zerg army is going to wipe this Terran army out pretty easily here. The Terran was just completely caught out of position there, trying to play a little bit too much offense. And one thing Buckshot was just talking about is playing to the map. You don't want to try and do a midfield contain on this map. Your strategy always depends on the map that you're playing on, because the map determines the terrain, determines which units are going to work best. It's going to determine build orders. You know, if you're playing as Protoss, a Forge Fast Expand isn't always going to work on every single map. It works better on some than others. That's why you see the pros always not doing the same build order every single time they play. So Blue's going for a little bit of Mutalisk harass here, but the little couple too many turrets up right now. He's going to try and engage these. He'll be able to take them out, but he's going to lose a lot of Mutalisks in the process here. He is going to snipe a couple mules, though, which is very detrimental to the Terran economy here, and he's trying to stim these Marines to come save it. He forces the Mutalisks away, But once again, now the Terran is on pretty hefty defense here, and the Zerg is going strong on 3 working bases right now. So it looks like he's got this game pretty under control. There could be a little bit more creep spreading right now. I know the Terran player was sniping the creep earlier, but he could start spreading that creep again, especially since he has queens out because of that early Banshee harass, and he could really take full control of the map right now.
Now you notice, okay, now our Zerg player is building 48 Zerglings, just to kind of, I guess, maybe eat up some supply. But just because you have a lot of minerals, I mean, he still has 1,000 gas. That could be 10 Mutalisks, and 10 more Mutalisks. What is known as the critical mass of mutas, where it just becomes so hard to stop Mutalisks when they get into such high numbers. 10 more Mutalisks would have done the trick that no amount of Thors or Marines really could have stopped them with any Zergling. But it looks like our Zerg player's really, he's going to look maybe for some bailing drop here with these Overlords. Kind of gearing, he's going kind of gearing up for one last push to finish this game. He has 4,000 minerals and 1,000 gas. He could easily re-macro an army if he loses. These tanks need to always be sieged up. If you're playing defense, there's no reason to have your tanks unsieged, just in case of an attack, especially against a Zerg player with Banelings. You need as many siege tank rounds to go off as possible. So it looks like our Zerg player is just kind of sitting in the midfield. Still not taking his third, his easy third. Look at, I mean, your natural's right there. Why not just take your third base, break it down with some Zerglings? And our Terran player trying to move out across the field, but it's 190 supply to 118. Losing a couple Mutalisks here to some sloppy placement. This tank's all, I don't know what this tank is. He's going to be a hero, taking some Banelings, I guess. Yeah, I mean, you can see how many Banelings it takes to kill a tank. I mean, it's very effective. And, oh, man, our Terran player, our Terran player got stuck in a corner. You see, he sieged up his tanks around his Marines. That actually would have been really good if there was no drops, because the siege tank, the Banelings would have had to gone through the siege tanks. And, wow, our Terran player actually doing a lot of damage there. That was actually pretty impressive from our Terran player. He caused a lot of army damage on that Zerg player.
That's right. That Terran player actually did cause a lot of damage there, but the biggest problem is, look what he has. That's his entire army right here. He's got some Marines coming out of the reacted barracks. He's got a couple siege tanks out, and the Zerg player is just sitting on these infestors and Zerglings. He's got an Ultralisk Cavern coming up, but I feel like he could win this game pretty easily with some mass-produced roaches right now. I mean, things like that. He could do Zerglings, he could do roaches, though. There's a lot of things that could win him this game pretty quickly instead of trying to tech up and just take more time. That amount of Zerglings would win the game right now, pretty easily. I know the Zerg player has a couple upgrades. How many does he have here? He's on 2 armor, 1 attack upgrade. That's a lot of upgrades for Zerglings. That's gonna keep them alive a lot longer than they should be. And he's got a he's got more upgrades on the way. The Ultra Cavern's almost finished. He's upgrading to a greater spire. I mean, this is all nice if you're trying to just completely soul crush your opponent, but at this point in the game, it's really not necessary. The Zerg could win this game pretty easily right now, but now he's just wasting more time. 82 Banelings on the way. That is a lot of Banelings. The Terran's going to come in with his drop in the back of the base, looks like, but it might just be a little bit too little too late. He'll probably do a good chunk of damage with it, maybe take out a tech structure or two. But all the Zerg player really has to do is just attack, and he'd probably win. Or he could just roll the Banelings into this and save it pretty easily. Looks like he's bringing, 40 Banelings or so over just to make sure. All of them. Never mind, all of them. Good pickup there.
He sees what's going on, though.
Yeah, he sees everything that's going on. I don't know if he can stop it, though. He's got a lot of siege tanks, though. That's a good idea. Yeah, less Marines, more siege. When you see that many Banelings on the field, just start going mech. And now the Terran player is actually ahead in supply. I do not know how the Zerg player hasn't just gone and won this game already. This is the biggest disadvantage, just sitting around. Don't sit around. If you have an obvious advantage... He just lost his Marines. He lost the Marines, but he took out a lot of economy with that. Here comes the 7 Ultras, but they're not necessary. You could have built, in this amount of time, he could have built 100 roaches and attacked, and then built 100 more. He'd probably... There it goes. All right, everybody. Sorry about that. My computer ran out of hard drive space, so I had to go grab my additional hard drive real quick. Anyway, so as we were saying, the Terran player just lost his Marines. The Banelings took him out there, but the Terran did a good deal of harassment there. So he's actually catching up. If we look at the supply here, it's 156 to 182. He's not that far behind. And if we go look at the Terran main base right now, you can see he's getting a good amount of siege tanks here, which is exactly what he needs to do. But this is exactly what he should not be doing. He should not be moving out, trying to become mobile, and going on the offense is not going to win him this game. If he would have just sat back in his base and let the Zerg player attack with all those Banelings and left all those siege tanks sieged up, he would have been in a pretty good position. He would have been able to hold off that Zerg attack pretty easily, because Banelings go down pretty quick to siege tanks, especially to this amount of siege tanks. Even if you have 82 of them, he still would have been in a pretty good spot. But right now, you can see that he went up and he attacked this base, and he took out a lot of the Zerg player's harvesters. The Zerg player's down to 18 harvesters, which is good, but the Zerg player decided to counterattack over here, and he is just going through this base like butter with these Ultralisks. So he has a lot of Ultras on the field now, which is pretty good for the Zerg player. But again, this could have kind of been avoided if the Terran player would have just held his ground, waited for the attack. He might have actually been able to hold on. As you can see, he's lifting off his buildings, so there's no anti-air for the Zerg player. No way to attack air besides maybe some infested Terrans. And now the Terran player is starting to move down. It looks like he's going to be going for a base trade here, which is probably about all he can do in this situation because he's so far out of position. But his biggest problem is he's going to move up. Yeah, he moved his Marines up way too far there, left the siege tanks unprotected, and Zerglings took out the siege tanks, and this entire ball of Ultras and Banelings is still left over. And no amount of Marines is going to be able to stop that. He needed all those siege tanks to even have a chance. And he leaves the game. He could have floated his buildings to a corner and been a colossal douche, but he decided not to be, so I guess we'll have to thank him for that. So our blue Zerg player, Asong, winning this game. Probably could have won it a lot sooner if he would have spent a little bit less time teching up. And maybe just spread out maybe a couple more bases and just go in some more basic units. Just keep his macro high. Yeah, he took every base except his easily defendable base. Don't be lazy. Break down rocks if you need to. Just use Zerglings. It takes a minute. It doesn't take long to do. Even with Zerglings, it's not hard to do, and it's a very easily defendable base.
So something our Terran player could have done better. Our Zerg player actually mined this whole base out, and there's no reason to let a Zerg player do this. Especially there's no creep spread there. He wouldn't have been able to defend it at all. A decently timed drop of all Marines would have killed all the drones there. At least kill the drones and not just let them free harvest there. You can maybe at least leave the hatchery. And really just it shows that how important siege tank placement is in a game of StarCraft 2 if you're going for some sort of siege tank marine play, especially against Banelings. So this has been StarCraft 2 EDU. Send us your replays and we will cast them.
Thanks.